Hello, this is Lon Safko, author of the Social Media Bible, and I am here for Extreme Digital Marketing. And I want to talk about creativity, the creative block. Are you suffering from creative block? Try these creative blockbusters. I traveled around the country doing innovation and creativity seminars, full day conferences, and I was doing 4 of them a week. And I actually, for several years, did 100 cities a year, which was absolutely insane. But I did it because I am so passionate about innovation and creativity. Matter of fact, the name of my company is Innovative Thinking because I'm all about it. And I know that this doesn't necessarily seem like it's part of extreme digital marketing. But you know what? If you're not creative, if you're not innovative, if you're not stepping out of the 9 dots, out of the box, out of the bun, you're not going to be successful at any kind of marketing, because the most successful marketing is the marketing that's most innovative and most creative. So what I want to talk about in this presentation is basically, how did you stop being innovative? How did you stop being creative? Now, we all have it in us, but for some reason it's been kind of driven out of us. Well, let me explain what those reasons are. The more and better you understand why we've been trained not to be creative, the more you can be aware of it, and the more you can stop those habits and actually become more creative. So let's take a look at some of the reasons for creativity and innovation and how it actually works. Now, what I want you to do is, and I'm going to give you a little bit of time to kind of practice this, I want you to say the word, not the color. I want you to read it. Pick any, just start at the top left-hand corner, and I want you to, as quickly as you can, I want you to read the name of the word. For example, yellow, black, purple, orange, as quickly as you can. Okay, you ready? Go. Okay, good, good. It wasn't that hard, was it? No, no, of course not. Now I want you to go back. I want you to do the exact same thing, but I want you to ignore what it says, and I just want you to give me the color. So it would be green, yellow, red, black. Okay, you ready? Okay, we're going to go ahead and do that right now. Okay, go. Boy, you sure messed that up, didn't you? It's not as easy as it looks. This actually is an eye chart. This came from an optometrist's office, and it just shows you the way I kind of think and look at things a lot differently. I was looking at this. This is to test color blindness, and I was playing with it, and I found, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. Let me explain what just happened to you and why you're feeling a little bit embarrassed about this, the second part of that quiz. The reason that you could read yellow, black, purple, orange is because that's the left side of your brain. You know what? There really is left and right sides of your brain. The brain handles and processes information differently. Some people, just like right and left-handed people, are predominantly or more strongly use one part of the brain over the other. Engineers, accountants, people that work with money, people that work with detail, predominantly use the left side of their brain. People that work in concepts, artists, architects, people who work with ideas, colors, those people predominantly use the right side of their brain. This is absolutely true. Most of us are left-sided brain thinkers, like we're right-handed people. And also, remember, it's the left side of your brain that actually controls your right hand. So it all starts to kind of make sense here. So most people that read this list the first way, where they're just reading the words and ignoring the color, that's okay. We're used to that. We're used to processing text. We're used to looking at WELLOW and knowing right away that it's yellow. We don't care what color it's written in. We're processing. We're processing the text with the left side of our brain, and we can do that really fast because we process information all the time. That's what we do. We're processing beings. Now, when I ask you to try to tell me the colors and not the words, wait a minute, now we've got a problem here. And the reason is a color is a concept, right? I mean, the concept that when I look at that green, I'm actually seeing the same green that you're seeing, or seeing green at all. I mean, I've been taught that when I see whatever that is, I call it green, but it's a concept that our brain has to then calculate. Remember, our speech is based on the left side of our brain. Speech is based on text and phonetics and moving your mouth the proper way, breathing properly, curling your tongue at the right time. Well, we've got to calculate that. So it's got to go from right brain concept over to left brain verbalization. Now we got a problem. Now we're trying to get one side of the brain to speak to the other side of the brain so that we can articulate it. You can see the colors very quickly, but in order to process and then convert that to language is very, very difficult, because that requires both sides of your brain, and both sides don't work equally efficiently. Mostly it's the left side, and the right brain has difficulty passing information back and forth between the right and left side. Does that make sense? Yeah, go back and try this a little bit later and see. If you can do the colors really quickly, you're probably an artist. You're probably a right brain kind of a person. You probably don't like details. You like concepts. And if you're like the majority of the population, you probably had trouble with that second half. This is a kind of a shortcoming that I want you to be aware of, because when you're trying to be innovative, creative, that's mostly coming from the right side of your brain. It's a concept from the right side of your brain, but it has to be articulated and communicated to the left side of your brain, and you have to put numbers to it. You got to draw it, you got to calculate it, you got to articulate it. Let's take a look at another one. What do you actually see here? What is the image that you see in front of you? I'm going to give you just a second. Well, the truth is that most everybody who looks at this, if you have never seen it before and know what the answer is, you're going to see one of two things. It's called the beautiful woman or old hag. You're either going to see a beautiful woman turning her head all the way to the right, and you see just her cheek and under her ear, or you're going to see an old hag with a big nose with a wart on it and kind of a big chin kind of sticking out. Look at the center of the image. If you've seen one, I want you to try to see the other. If you've seen the beautiful woman, I want you to see the old hag. The old hag's mouth is the necklace on the beautiful woman's neck. Her eye is the beautiful woman's ear. And the beautiful woman's face, cheek, and chin is the old hag's nose. Again, if you're having trouble seeing it, pause the video, find it, and then come back. Now, if you've seen the old hag, I want you to do the reverse. I want you to look at the old hag's nose and notice that it's a beautiful woman turning her head all the way to the right. And that wart is actually the beautiful woman's nose, and that eyelash, look at that eyelash sticking out. And the old hag's eye is actually the ear of the beautiful woman. The old hag's mouth is a necklace. Do you see it? If you don't, take a moment. Okay, so what's going on here? How come some people, 50% of the people who look at this see a beautiful woman and 50% see an old hag? Well, it's more than just a half full glass. The glass is half full, half empty. What's happening is that when you see a shape, an object, you instantly run it through your database in your brain, your right side, your concepts, try to figure out what it matches up to. You match up shapes. Based on your personal experiences in your life, you're either going to match it up to an old hag or a young woman. It's just based on your own personal experiences. Nothing more, nothing less. If there's an image that even remotely matches this in your memory that looks like an old hag, it's going to make that match. So what I want you to realize here, the important thing about this optical illusion, and I use optical illusions to point out why our brains think the way they do, is if you're looking for a solution, often you'll look at that solution, but you won't see it based on your personal experiences. So really what happens is you're going to see something different than what you're looking for, what you want to find. But yet the information is right there in front of you if you can A, realize that your brain may be tricking you, and B, take that extra moment to really study and look at all of the possibilities that that information provides to you. So don't get tricked by past experiences. And a lot of this gets back to this nature-nurture. This, in this case, is kind of nurture, because it's what we've learned over our lifetime that is allowing us to see one image or the other. And believe it or not, in my conferences and keynotes, you'd be shocked on how many people see one but just can't see the other one no matter how much time I try to take. Again, if you haven't seen it, pause the video and work it out. What do you see here? Yeah, most people say, okay, it looks like a star, one of those Chinese things that you throw and stick in people. And someone else says it kind of looks like the Batman symbol, or kind of like a stylized kind of vicious bird of some sort. If you've seen that, if that's what you see, then you're really among the majority of people who have seen this presentation, because that's what they see, this black image. But really what I want you to do is switch that around a little bit, because that's not what I want you to see. I want you to see the question mark in a black ellipse or a black oval. Do you see that? The question mark? Here's again what's happened here. If you saw the black bird or Batman symbol, it's because, think about it, our entire lives, all the information that we have seen, we've been presented with, has been black information on a white background. That's what's happening here. All the information that you need to understand is presented in black, and the background is white. What about a newspaper, a magazine, a book, a website, a social networking site, an email? Wow, think about that. Yeah, we never read white text on a black background, so why should your brain be looking for information where it's white information on a black background? Do you see that nature nurture again? Nurture, you've been trained not to see the information. You've got however many years you've been alive, that's how many years that you've got to prove that white information never shows up in white. It's always black on a white background. So be aware of that. That's really important.
A friend of mine has a car phone. He has an answering machine on his car phone. The message is, "Hi, I'm home right now." So I can't come to the phone. But if you leave your name and number, I'll call you when I'm out.
That's Stephen Wright, and I love him. He's one of the most cerebral comedians, him and George Carlin, because they look at things different. The thing I like about Stephen Wright is that he look at things opposite. Think about all of his humor. If you've ever heard of any of his humor, he'll take something that's commonly known, the things that we all take for granted, and he'll make something opposite. In this case, he did, "I'll call you when I'm out." I love that. You gotta love that. And I got a chance to meet him one time, and he is as funny in person, honestly, as he is on the stage. Kept calling me Lon Chaney for some reason. Have no idea why, but couldn't get off that. But he's funny, and so is George Carlin. Now, here's another thing I want you to look at. I want you to stare at those white dots. No, the white dots. Yeah, I know you're seeing some black. You see black dots? Okay, well, how many black dots do you see? Wait a minute. You can't see white and black dots. Either you're seeing black dots or you're seeing white. How many you're seeing black dots? They're white dots. This is not a GIF or a moving image. This is a regular image. It's not changing. I know you. Okay, here's the deal. Yeah, you are seeing black dots, but only temporary. Here's why. As your eyes scan across this, the spaces between the squares are kind of a little grayed out, and the boxes themselves, the squares, are very black. They are 100% black. And you have these white dots. What's happening is as your eye scans across this, you have something called rods and cones in your eye, in your retina, the back of your eye, that get excited by photons. They come alive, they get alerted whenever a light photon passes through and hits that rod or that cone. Cones see colors, rods see black and white. So when your eye is scanning across this picture and you're looking at the black square, that rod is turned off or turned on. So, and same goes for when you're seeing those bright white circles. The amount of time that you see a black dot where the white dot is supposed to be is exactly how long it takes for the nerve, the microscopic nerve ending in the rod in your eye to dissipate the chemical that made that connection. Let me rephrase this. When the rod is stimulated, it secretes, all your nerves do, like when you touch your skin, for example, the very tip of that nerve secretes a chemical that creates a chemical reaction that allows an electric circuit to be completed that then sends that message back up through a bundle in your into your visual cortex, and that's how you create images. The amount of time that you see that black dot is how long it takes that cell, that nerve ending, to get rid of that chemical and to re-break that connection so that you can continue to see moving images. So what's the moral of this optical illusion? Physically, we have restraints. Physically, our bodies are wired in such a way that we see things that aren't there, and we don't see things that are there. We actually have physical limitations that keep us from seeing the truth, seeing the answer, seeing the innovative solutions. Be aware, this is only one example. There are no black dots, but yet we can see them, we can count them, and then suddenly they disappear. This is limitations of our actual physical bodies, our eyes and our brains. Take a look at this elephant and just tell me how many legs it has. Well, you know it has 4 legs, so how are you coming up with more legs? Something's wrong. Yeah, it's an optical illusion. And again, we look at the elephant, we then draw on however many years you've been around of history of seeing that shape. We instantly know that shape is an elephant. It doesn't take us long to pull that out of our database. But then when we start to kind of study it, wait a minute, something is wrong with this. You know, we start looking at the legs and we can't put our finger on it, but something ain't right. The elephant's got way too many legs. Can't happen. But it kind of makes sense because if you look at the bottom of the picture, it makes complete sense. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 legs. If you look at the top of the picture, it makes sense. Optical illusion. Just because we associated this elephant with past experiences doesn't mean that it's really an elephant. In this case, it's an impossibility. Don't be tricked. Too often our brain will do this, and you saw how fast you picked this out as an elephant. Too often our brains will make that association instantly and then shut off. I got it, it's an elephant. Let's move on. If I didn't point out the feet, the legs, you know what? If I would have just even sat here for a minute talking to you about something else and went on to the next slide, there's probably close to 100% chance that you would never even notice the problem with the legs. Only when I called it out did you notice it, because your brain recognized it as an elephant, it shut down, didn't need to look at anything else, and it just simply moved on. Don't let your brain do that.
Went to the hardware store and bought some used paint. It was in the shape of a house. I also bought some batteries, but they weren't included. So I had to buy them again. What do batteries run on?
Again, pretty clever stuff. I mean, just think about it. You can buy almost anything used. Why not buy used paint? And you always hear batteries aren't included, so when you buy batteries, it shouldn't be a surprise that batteries aren't included. But that doesn't make sense. Don't take anything for granted. Now, look at this. Can you build that out of aluminum or wood? Certainly looks like you can, doesn't it? But you know that that's an impossibility. But when you look at it, it looks like a possibility. It's an optical illusion. Don't take for granted that just because you're seeing it, that it's actually there, that it's real. Your brain is locking onto it. The shadowing looks great. Remember, shadowing is really critical when we're looking at objects because we always assume that the sun is in the upper left-hand corner. Believe it or not, we always assume that the sun is, or whatever the light source is in the upper left-hand corner, and it's getting lit diagonally from the top left. Yeah. It's really weird. Think about the shadowing on letters and on signs and on graphics and creative. The light source always comes from the top left. And if you move it to a different location, lower right, lower left, even top right, you'll become uncomfortable with that image. Yeah, it's really weird. Well, of course, this is possible, right? No. Who's famous for these type of drawings? Think of the name. No, it's not MC Hammer. It's MC Escher. MC Escher. Yeah, MC Escher did a whole bunch of these different types of optical illusions. And again, when you look at the components of the optical illusion, it's amazing because it looks perfect. I mean, there's no problem with it. But when you look at it as a whole, you know that it's a complete and total impossibility. But again, I use this because I don't want you to be tricked by information that's not there or misled by information that you think is there. Look up MC Escher on the internet. You'll see some amazing stuff. His life, work, it was just amazing. Okay, now if you've seen this, you can speed the video up a little bit, but if you haven't, and actually even if you have, I want you to just refocus on it. You've heard of the 9 dots and get out of the box, get out of the bun. You've heard all of that stuff before. This was real popular during the time of Tom Peters in Search of Excellence, and when business seminars really kind of took off back in the mid 80s. And that's when I first found out about it. I think it was 1985. But you know what? It's every bit as valid and valuable to us today as it was back then, because it's about creativity and it's about how we're taught not to be creative. Now, what I want you to do is hit the pause button on the video. Not yet, not until I get to the end of the sentence here. And I want you to go get a piece of paper and a pencil, and I want you to just make 9 dots that look like this. They don't have to be big dots, just dots. Make them on a piece of paper. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to connect every one of those dots with 4 straight lines. That's all. There's nothing more complicated. 4 straight lines. I want you to connect those 9 dots. You can't lift the pen from the paper. You can't go back over a line. You can't fold the paper. Nothing funny. Put the paper down. Don't lift the pen from the paper. And just go zip, 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 zip. 4 straight lines. Bing, 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 bing. And I want you to connect those 9 dots. Okay, I'm going to wait for you. I mean, it's really simple. You just got to connect 9 dots with 4 lines. So just do that. Are you done? Do you need a little bit more time? Okay. Okay, you got it now. You don't have it. Okay. 4 lines. Zip, 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 zip. 4 straight lines. Okay, you still don't have it. Okay, you know what? I'm going to let you hit pause now and work on it a little bit. Don't get frustrated. You really can do it. I'm just going to play this little audio here for you. Maybe. Okay, actually, I'm going to show you the solution. So if you don't want to see the solution yet, now you got to hit pause.
I've been making wine at home, but I make it out of raisins, so it'll be aged automatically.
Okay, there's a solution. There it is. Start in the top left. Go all the way. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, you never thought about going out of the dots. You were trying to stay within the dots. And you were trying to connect them with 4 lines. But the line 1 and 2 in the lower left goes out of the dots, and the line 2 and 3, top right corner, goes out. Why did you think that you had to stay within the dots? Did you hear me say that that was part of the rules? I never said that. Matter of fact, I led this whole thing up. I led this exercise up with get out of the 9 dots. Get out of the box. You've heard that saying your whole life. Get out of the box. Get out of the 9 dots. That's what this means. Get out of the box. You imposed restrictions on yourself that you didn't have to. And let me tell you why. Ever since we were a kid, ever since we're 2 years old and we could hold a crayon, what has all of the people that we trusted told us to do? Color within the lines. Color within the lines. Our parents told it, our teachers, our nuns, our grandparents, our older siblings. The people that we trusted the most told us to color within the lines. So what makes you think that after all these years of coloring within the lines that you're going to automatically just step outside of the lines and find the solution? Isn't that tricky? I mean, that's absolutely amazing. Let me tell you an experiment that I did a few years back. I have two granddaughters, and when they were 4 and 6, I had them over to the house, and I would do kind of like really strange stuff. I would say, like, go in the round room and sit in the corner, and I'd watch them start to sweat. Things just kind of program them with things that couldn't be done. And one of the things I mean, yeah, it really ticks off my wife, the grandma. And so what happened was there was this one day they sat down at the dining room table, and we ran out, of course, to one of those super centers and bought all kinds of coloring books and crayons, because trust me, whatever you pay on activities where you can keep them from fighting with one another or just getting bored, it's worth every penny of it. And if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about, and if you're a grandparent, yeah, you second time around. So they were going to sit down and color, and one of the granddaughters said, "So, Papa, could I color a drawing for you?" I said, "Would you please?" I said, "I would really, really love it. I want to put it up on the refrigerator." I said, "But one of the things that I want you to do," I said, "be very careful. I want you to color outside of the lines." And of course, she looked at me like I'd lost my mind, and my wife gave me that dirty look. And I said, "No, I want you to color outside of the lines." She goes, "No, Papa, color inside the lines." I said, "No, everybody knows how to do that. I want you to do a drawing for me. Take your time and just color outside of the lines." Honestly, I had absolutely no idea what that meant or what they were going to do, but they kind of trusted me, which I guess is kind of sick, a little bit cruel. Like all the time when they ask if they can go into the pool, I said, "Yeah, you can go swimming, but just don't get wet." "What do you mean?" "Well, you can swim, just please don't get wet." "Well, how am I supposed to do that?" I said, "Well, swim between the water." And of course, they think for a really long time and then know that I'm just screwing with them. Okay, so what happened is about 20 minutes later, they said that they were done. And the older granddaughter, who again I think now is 6 or 8, she gives me back this drawing. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. The colors that she was going to use to color in the shapes, she actually drew real hard just outside the black lines of each of those shapes. Now imagine that. Took a crayon and drew outside of the shape with just a real heavy line with a really bright color. The bright color next to the black line made the painting, the drawing, look iridescent because of the contrast between the color and the black line and all of the white. The thing was amazing. I so regret that I didn't scan that in. And the next time you're at a restaurant, ask if they got the kids' crayons. I know you're an adult, but get the coloring, get the crayons, and color outside of the lines, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's absolutely, it was amazing. And I had no idea, because I always try to look at things opposite just to see what's there. Now, okay, you see the solution of the 4 lines and the 9 dots. I want you to solve this now with 3 lines. Yeah, I'm busting your chops. I want 3 lines. Connect all 9 dots with 3 lines. Hey, I showed you the solution of 4, and I've even given you a solution. Get out of the box. So do it with 3 lines. Now, I am going to jump to the solution here in a minute, so if you want to try to work on it on your own, hit pause on the video. Otherwise, here it comes. You ready? Yeah, just take a moment and look at the elegance. Isn't that just beautiful? Again, nobody said it had to go through the center of the dots. Why did you think that it had to go through the center of the dots? Because that's what we've been taught. If the dots are large enough, you can pass through all of them, like you see, and still connect all those dots with 3 straight continuous lines. There's no reason to go through the center. But you imposed that restriction on you. You imposed that rule, not me. Never said it. Matter of fact, I've been doing everything I can to encourage you not to do that. So remember, when you're looking for a problem, a solution to a problem, you're looking for an innovative solution, don't impose restrictions on the problem that aren't there. Because what you'll do is you'll prevent yourself from finding the solution, and you shouldn't have. Okay, wise guy. 3 lines. I want you to do this now. I want you to connect all 9 dots, and I want you to use just 1 straight line. 1 straight line. Again, I'm about to ready to show you the solution. So if you want to try it, then go ahead, hit pause, and then when you get frustrated, come on back. Here it comes. Who said that the line has to be as thin as a pen line? I didn't say that. It could be like a white stripe in a road. I mean, how wide is a stripe on a road? That's still a line, isn't it? Don't go over the yellow line. Well, in this case, here's a red line. You could make it as wide as the dots. I never put that restriction. And this can go on and on and on. I'm just going to frustrate you. So we're going to move on to the next slide. There's something that I actually developed and kind of copyrighted. And if you go to the internet and you type in Prentice Hall, Financial Times, Lon Safko, 3Cs. This is something that I did that's called the 3Cs. And really what it is a way, a process of how to be more innovative. For example, let's take a look at those 3Cs. Collect, collection. What I want you to do is if you're going to try to solve a problem that you've never solved before, or come up with a new idea, a new concept, new whatever, the first thing you got to do is you got to collect information. Sit down with a yellow pad or stand up to a whiteboard, a dry erase board, and write down the 5 W's. Remember the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, why, when, how? Okay, that comes from the old Cub reporters, the newbies that used to report for the newspaper. They were taught the 5 W's. If you answer those 5 questions, you will have every single component to actually write a really good newspaper article. The 5 W's. The reason I want you to write those down is because I want you to go through the exercise of completely understanding everything that you need to know about the problem or the solution. Now, this could be for solving problems, but it could also be for creating new ideas. This doesn't have to be a reactive situation. This can be proactive. So write down who. Who does it affect? Who is it involved? Whose uses it? Who doesn't use? Any who kind of question that you can associate with the solution. Do that. What are we talking about? What's involved? What are the components? What time, day, what day of the week? Any kind of a what question that you can come up with, and just simply write it down. Trust me, it's not so much what you're going to have when you're done. It's the act of writing this stuff down that's going to put it into your brain so that you can start calculating what that answer is. Same thing with where, when, why, and how. Answer every type of question that you can form around those words. And when you're done, write it on the paper, write it on the board, read it over a couple of times. Now you have then trained your mind to understand as much questions. You have framed the problem or framed the solution as best as you can with as much information, as much detail as possible. Make sense? It's an exercise. Trust me on this. Now, calculation, there's not a heck of a lot you can do to speed up this calculation. Your brain just kind of does it. It takes all this information. But let me tell you part of the calculation phase that you may not be aware of. While your brain is calculating, it may be minutes, hours, days, or months. For example, I was trying to figure out one time how I was going to replace a 1/2-inch PVC water line to my aerators on my swimming pool that had broken inside the concrete slab. It took me 9 months to figure it out, but then I realized all I have to do is take the expansion joint with a concrete saw, cut it open to accommodate the hose, the pipe, the 1/2-inch pipe, which was almost 1/2 inch anyway, and then simply put the expansion material back in. And I didn't have to jackhammer the slab or even try to find where the leak was. That's the calculation mode. What happens is, in this calculation period, you're going to be sensitive to solutions, to pieces of the puzzle. For example, when you play slug bug, everybody plays slug bug. You see the commercials, you see a Volkswagen punch the person in the shoulder. You're not sensitive. You can go for days and never notice that there's a Volkswagen on the road. But as soon as you start to play, you notice all of them. If you're thinking of buying a new car, instantly you can see how many other people are on the road driving that same new car. If you're wearing a particular piece of clothes, or let's say you want to buy an iPhone or an iPad, all of a sudden you start noticing all the people that have it. That's because your brain now is triggered to that type of information. Your brain will listen to the radio, listen to television, conversations, read magazines, billboards, any kind of information that comes in. If it thinks that it's useful subconsciously, it'll set it aside and make it part of the solution. But if you haven't done step 1, collection, then your brain doesn't know what it's looking for. Now, when your brain gets all of that information, and it's actually ready to try to come up with a solution and to communicate. Remember, the solution is going to be a concept. Remember, concepts are processed on the right side of your brain, not the left. So it's got to now communicate from the right side to the left side of your brain, or from the subconscious to the conscious, so that you can articulate that solution. Communication, step 3, the stop, look, and listen of the creative process. Here's the deal. You have got to provide yourself with some quiet time if you want to listen to the solution that your brain is yelling at you. Now, let me give you an example. Everybody who's listening to this video, I know for a fact, has had creative moments. You've come up with some really creative stuff. Trust me, if you don't remember anything in adulthood, think of how creative you were as a teenager. I rest my case. Or how creative you were when you were in college. I rest my case. Okay, so you've been creative. Now, in your adult life, when have you been the most creative? When have really good ideas come to you? Think about it. Okay, you with your hand up? Absolutely, in the shower. When you're in the shower, you get very good ideas, creative ideas. And here's why. The left side of your brain is always processing the information around you. The temperature of the room, the chair pushing up against your backside, your arms on the chair, the cup of coffee in your hand, the background noises. Your left side of your brain is taking in literally thousands and thousands of pieces of information every minute. And it's only allowing you to be conscious of whatever's important to you, whatever's going to affect your life. So say, for example, you're about ready to step off the curb and your brain picks up a faint sound of a truck horn. You're not going to step off the curb. You're going to step back up because that's going to save your life. But you have ignored the taxi and the people talking behind you and the church bells because only what was important to you was allowed to filter from your subconscious to your conscious. Does that make sense? So really, life-threatening things are always pushed forward to the conscious from the subconscious. So if you want to hear this solution, if you want your subconscious to communicate to your conscious, you got to give it some quiet time. When my youngest daughter was a teen, part of her responsibility in the house was to do all of the housework. She had to vacuum and mop every Saturday. That was her job. We taught our kids to be responsible. And what she would do is if my wife and I were out, we'd come back in. She'd have the television in every room on. She'd have her Walkman in her ears. That's blasting. She's got the portable phone in her back pocket. Vacuum is going back and forth, smashing into furniture. I mean, it was just something to see. And I used to tease her about it, that her, as a teenager, like many teens, have a need for noise, And think about it, even as adults, we have a need for noise. We want to be continuously distracted. From the time you get up, you turn on the radio, you put on your iPod, you put on the television, you're watching the news, you get in your car, the radio goes on, you get to work, you're distracted. Stop distracting yourself from the solutions, please. Give yourself some quiet time. By a show of hands, where's some other places that you get really good creative ideas? At the gym. That's exactly right. At the gym. Or when you're running, right? When you're exercising and you're running. Why? Well, when you're in the shower, you don't really have to worry about a lion eating you or a truck running you over or any life-threatening situation. The left side of your brain pretty much can go on hold. And you can listen to the right side, the concepts that your right side of your brain has come up with. When you're driving in the car, if the radio's on, you're distracted and you're listening and taking in all that data from the radio, which is stopping you from communicating. But if you just shut off the radio, when you're jogging, when you're on the treadmill, if you're quiet, you will think of really good ideas, right? How about, give me another idea. Okay, yeah, over on the left. Yeah, exactly. When you sleep, how many people wake up in the middle of the night? Exactly 2:33 a.m. is when I get my ideas. For some reason, it's not a minute after and not a minute before for years. 2:33. And I keep a yellow sticky pad and a pen. I keep it on the nightstand so that when I do wake up, I can write down those ideas. Because, again, by a show of hands, how many people have come up with a really killer idea in the middle of the night and you knew that it was such a good idea that there was no way that you were going to forget it. And the first thing in the morning, it's gone. Let me see. Was that a cure? Cure for cancer? No. Coffee? No, you don't have to cure coffee. What? Geez. And it's gone forever. You're asleep. You're safe. The left side of your brain is shut down. It's taking a rest. The right side of your brain is going 90 miles an hour, coming up with great ideas. It's pushing this information to the left side of your brain. The left side of your brain is only half awake. You wake up, you repeat it, you fall back to sleep, and it's gone because you haven't actually burned the neural networks necessary to retain it. So here's the bottom line. Get away from that need for noise. When you get in the car, please turn the radio off. Don't listen to the radio. Don't listen to your iPod. Listen to yourself. The answer is in your brain. Just listen to it. When you're at work, leave the radio off. When you come home from work at night, not every night. I'm not asking you to make that kind of a sacrifice. One night, just put on some background music without words. Because remember, words lock into the left side of your brain. You don't want to do that. You don't want your left side of your brain active. You want it to take a break. Put on, instrumental music. I know, it sounds like elevator music, but it's important. And just trust me on this. That's why meditation works so well. If you're into meditation, you know exactly what I'm talking about, or yoga. Absolutely. So get rid of the need for noise. I want you to collect, go through that exercise that helps your brain understand it, calculate. Your brain will find the pieces to that solution, and then communicate. Give yourself some quiet time. Stop, look, and listen to allow the right side of your brain to communicate those great ideas to the left side. If you don't do it, the communication won't take place. Now, here's another slide that I want to talk about here. This is an example of seeing information that's not there is more important than the information that is. There was a time where I went into the port of San Diego, which was the port of San Diego had about 950 leaseholds, all the hotels and restaurants along the water, as well as San Diego International Airport. The port owned all of the property from Tijuana all the way up to Point Loma, about 23 miles of shoreline, and they managed it. And I actually set up, managed, and built their first website back in the early part of this decade. Actually, the last decade, 2001, and 2001. And I used to run server reports, and this is an example of the server reports. And we would look at them, and I would try to convince other people the importance of it. Never really got anywhere, but I'm sharing it with you. Now, the strengths were government. Who was looking at us? Well, we were being looked at by government, by military, by academia. Of course, the United States Navy was there. The government involvement in the Port of San Diego and military and academia was very important. Business hours, Monday through Friday. You've heard that in my other presentations. People were looking at the airport. Of course, that's a draw. That's a big deal. The next most important thing that people looked at was job opportunities, and then the Board of Port Commissioners. So that was actually listed according to priority, and we were doing a good job because people were going to our website looking for that information, and you would expect that. But as long as we're doing a good job on that, I don't care. That'll take care of itself. I want to know, what are we missing? What aren't we doing a good job? Let me tell you what we weren't doing a good job with. The demographic for a government agency is everybody within a geographic area. Every man, woman, and child, every organization, schools, families, kids, businesses. That's your demographic. We didn't have any kids coming to the website. Well, it's the port. It's government. Well, of course, but still, that's our demographic. We didn't have any families. We didn't have any K through 12 schools. We had a lot of universities. I mean, Southern California is rich with some of the greatest universities on the planet. But we didn't have any K-12. Nobody was looking at us on nights and weekends. We had 16 parks. I was the director of Parks and Recreation. I brought the Beach Boys in to sing a free concert. I got one of the admirals to do donuts with an aircraft carrier so people could see what the Navy was doing. I'm not kidding you. This is absolutely true. We had people jumping out of airplanes. We had Navy SEALs diving into the parks with the parachutes just to show what was going on down at the port. But we had nobody who cared. Nobody was looking at our website nights and weekends. Nobody really cared a lot about the Marine Port or special events. So wait a minute, isn't that the area of most growth? Don't look at what people are successful with. Look at what's missing from the equation. Often what's missing is your greatest area of improvement. So those were our weaknesses. So if you look through this list, nights, weekends, K-12, families, kids, the majority of that list was really about getting to family and kids. Because if you get the family and kids, you got the schools. Remember what Apple did in the 80s. They gave away computers to schools. They sold them at cost until Microsoft sued them, made them stop doing that, because they knew that if you were hooked on this stuff as a kid, that when you got to high school, when you got to college, when you got out into the workforce, you would want an Apple, and nowadays Macintosh. So the bottom line is, steal the kids, you got the families. If you can capture the kids, you got the attentions of the parents and the schools and the teachers. Okay, and I mean that figuratively, of course. Don't go out. Okay, well, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. So in the first 30 months, this is what we were able to do. Go from 2,000 visitors all the way up to 137,000 visitors. So you can see the percent growth. It grew about 15% every 30 days cumulatively. So how did we do that? How did I do that? Well, let me just pose a question. I needed to come up with a marketing concept that included kids, families, and teachers. So what do we know? We know that we got to do something with kids, schools, camps, daycares, teachers, whatever, families. Okay. So what do we know? Kids. That's what we got to get. We got to capture the kids. How are we going to do that? What do kids like? What do kids like to do? What do kids like to do? Kids like to play. Okay, we know that. Every kid likes to play. What do kids like to play with? Toys, right? Now, trust me, I literally did this on a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock on a dry erase board, and it turned into a company that I've run for 10 years, made $250,000 on. I own 3 patents on this three-dimensional internet advertising, and it was just answering these simple questions. What I'm getting at is that you can answer these questions to your problems, and you can come up with monumental solutions. Okay, so what do kids like to play with? Toys. Okay, survey says toys. What else do we know? What is the only marketing distribution medium I have? What marketing medium are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the internet. That was my purpose, is to get to the kids, capture the kids, and use the internet. Okay, now kids don't do well with non-tangible toys. I mean, yeah, they'll make believe. That's really cool, but they need something to make believe with. Give them a truck, and they'll make believe that they're building a bridge. Give them a dollhouse, and they'll make believe that their family is living in that house. But you got to give them something tangible. Think about it for a second. When you go to the internet, you got words, you got music, you got images, you got these videos. But when you turn off the computer, what happens to all of that information? It goes away. When you kill the power, it's gone. So you really got to be able to create something tangible. Think for a second. What is the only thing connected to a computer that actually allows you to walk away from the computer with something tangible in your hand? Yeah, it was the printer. So I knew that I had to create some kind of a toy for kids that could be distributed over the internet that had something to do with a printer. Create a toy that can be distributed over the internet and be printed. Okay, so here's the elevator pitch, which again, eventually this turned into a company that I've been running for over 10 years. What if I could create a specialty advertising product similar to a t-shirt or a coffee mug with your marketing message and logo, which we can change every 15 minutes, where your customers, who will represent all demographics, men, women, and children, will actually ask for it, and I will manufacture and fulfill that product anywhere in the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'll fulfill it instantly, and it will only cost you 10 cents. Are you interested? That was the pitch that I gave to United Airlines. United Airlines was one of my first customers, British Airways, Ford Motor Company, General Motors, United States Department of Interior, San Diego International, City of San Diego, and the NBC. The list just kind of goes on and on. So what did we actually come up with? Printer, a few pieces of paper, and in this case, that is the Star of India, the sailing ship that is docked in San Diego. It's a museum. It's the oldest 3-masted sailing ship in the world, and you can go and look at it, and they take it out once a year. And just simply by going to a website, you can download a PDF, you get some paper and scissors and a little glue, and an hour later you've got an exact replica of the Star of India. Exact, because I took photographs of it. So if there's a scratch on the hull, there's a scratch on your model. If there's a tear in the sail, there's a tear in the sail on your model. And you can distribute it for free, and it's completely accurate. Now, here's some of the earlier ones that we did. As I said, NBC, United Airlines, the San Diego Mission, Ford Motor Company, Chevrolet. And then we branched out into these educational products, such as you see here, Independence Hall, as well as the Capitol Building. And our education division got huge. It represents 90%. Our commercial division only represents 10% of our revenues. If you think about it, there's 60 million kids in the United States that generally about 8 o'clock on a Sunday night, the parents are looking for a solution because the project is due Monday morning. They can go and download any one of the 21 California missions or the Capitol Building or the White House or Mount Rushmore or the Alamo, and you get the history. So basically for $9.99, $9.95, under $10, you got every single thing that you need to basically get an A. And it's delivered to your home in seconds. Not a bad idea. It's won me 3 patents already. So being creative, I mean, really, it's just about just going through the process. Now, I want you to take a minute. Probably the best thing to do is to hit pause, and I want you to read this. Just start to read it, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. One of the things that we learn in marketing is that spelling is really critical. Kind of makes you wonder why. You can read this. Now, this was done by Columbia University, or Cambridge University, and what it says is it doesn't matter what order the type is in as long as the first and last letters. Why? Well, because our brain, you can't possibly read every single letter in every word, and when 2 vowels go walking, the first one does the talking, except sometimes Y and W, and the second month alone in 28 days has February. I mean, you can't do that and be able to read and comprehend what you're reading. You got to have some kind of a mechanism to move quickly. Let me tell you what happens. The left side of your brain picks up the first and last letter. The right side of your brain looks at the general shape, the concept of the word, knows what the word is, passes it back to the left. So each time you read a word, you don't read the individual characters. You almost instantly, by the shape of the word, recognize the concept. So you're stringing together concepts. Is that amazing? I mean, isn't that something? And it's absolutely true. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Beautiful woman or hag? Well, conditioning. What we're talking about is conditioning. You see one or the other based on what you've experienced in your lifetime. Organize it. Do the 3 C's. It really works. Get the information. Get out of the box. Don't put rules and restrictions on yourself that simply don't belong there. The power of teams, that's also something good. Every single person has their own restrictions that they're bringing to the solution. They have their own prejudices based on whatever they've learned in their lifetime. But when you get multiple people working on the same problem, you have different prejudices, you have different restrictions. So what is a restriction to one is not to the other. So by building teams, you are compiling the best of the best, and you're eliminating each individual restriction by having somebody who doesn't have that same restriction. So there is a huge difference in power teams. I teach a full day on the success of team building. Man, I just love it. It's so much fun because when you pull all of those minds together, it's amazing. If you've got 10 40-year-olds, you've got 400 years of personal experience to draw on. Think about that. 400 years of experience to draw on. And you also filter out the individual restrictions and often step away from the problem. In my company, I had a computer company where I developed the first computer to save a human life. One of the things that I did was like once a month, everybody got a day off, and we went out into the desert, we went hiking, we put up a sign that said "Gone fishing." And you know what? When we're out and we're talking, even though the rule was you're not allowed to talk about work, we would solve all the problems that we were having at work because we stepped away from the problem. We were relaxed, we were having fun, and we had a team. So sometimes just getting away from the problem. Peer pressure. People, you're afraid of making a mistake. You're afraid of looking stupid. You're afraid of doing the wrong thing. You're afraid of suggesting something that nobody's ever done before. You're afraid of failure. Stop that. That's where the great answers are. Think of every single famous person that has come up with creativity and innovation. Think about it. Everybody laughed at them. They laughed at the Wright brothers. It'll never get off the ground. They laughed at the first computer. Thomas Watson said nobody would ever want a personal computer. When the car came out, everybody yelled, "Get a horse." But these are all incredible inventions that changed our lives. Chaos creates insecurity. When you're chaotic, when you're lost, when you're jumping around, you become insecure. Don't worry about insecurity. If you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. If you're not creating, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. So don't be insecure. And that's the thing with these famous people, the Thomas Edisons and the George Westinghouses and the Wright brothers. They weren't insecure with chaos. They thrived on it. They felt comfortable. They had the self-confidence. And it's easy to judge, but it's hard to be judged. Yeah, you can point to someone else who makes a mistake, but when they point out your mistakes, you take it personal. Don't do that. Don't forget the 3 C's. Again, I'm going to repeat that. Collect, compute, communicate. And not comfortable crossing the line. Get comfortable. If you want to be innovative, you have to be able to cross the line. You've got to step out of those 9 dots. And I'm not supposed to do that. Okay? Well, why not? A lot of times those are self-imposed restrictions. And George Lucas was terrible in school. He sat in 4th grade class playing with these little army men, making up stories in his head, which eventually became Star Wars. And they thought that he wasn't right in the head because he couldn't focus on school like everybody else. He was focusing on something else. You don't want to appear to be immature. You know what? I always want to be immature. I've got the Peter Pan complex. I don't want to grow up. All of my grandkids call me Papa Monkeyhead. And they call me Papa Monkeyhead because I am a monkeyhead. I do silly stuff. And it keeps me young, it keeps them happy, and keeps my wife happy. Now, I want to give you an example. Outback earrings. My youngest daughter worked for Outback Steakhouse, and what they said to her was, you could not wear earrings that are bigger than a quarter. And she had this one boss that was brutal about earrings. And I can't tell you how many times she was trying to be stylish, and she was told to take her earrings off and put them in her purse. They could not be bigger than the size of a quarter. Now, the next slide that about to show you, I never could convince her to wear, but I said if they can't be bigger than a quarter, isn't that cool? I mean, if they can't be bigger than a quarter, why don't we do this? That's not larger than a quarter. Well, the size is larger than a quarter, but certainly not the denomination. It depends on how you define that. Well, she never really quite wanted to go there and wear those, but that was my solution. You would stand out, they'd be stylish, nobody would have anything like it, and that's not bigger than a quarter. Matter of fact, that's the exact same size. Now let me show you another example. I don't know, a couple of years ago I was standing in the shower and I got soap under my arms and in my face, and I got the handheld shower thing head there, and I'm spraying it under my arms, but you got to kind of rub the soap to kind of get it off. And I didn't have an extra hand. I mean, how do you well, wait a minute, what if you just simply did this? What if you just put those soft bristle vacuum attachments and allow them to just clip on? Wouldn't that feel nice on your back or under your arms or even on your face if it was the right material? What if you put kind of a loofah attachment, because you can reach really right down to the middle of your back? Why hasn't anybody ever thought of putting Snap-on attachments on a shower head? Geez, it frees up a hand. It'll help scrub. I would love to do something like that. Haven't taken the time, but those are the kinds of ideas that I think of when nobody's looking. Here's another one. I call it the Mop Bucket Dilemma. Whenever my wife or I mop the floors, and I know that you've had this problem, you've got a mop, you've got a bucket, now you've poured the water out, now you've got the sopping wet mop. Now you're going to go put it in the utility room or out in the garage. What do you do with it? You can leave the mop on the floor, and of course the mop is going to stick to the floor. It's going to stain the floor. It's going to get nasty. You can put the mop in the bucket, and of course it falls all the way over to the side, tips the bucket over, and the water sits in the bucket underneath the mop. Have you ever smelled one of those mops that have gone sour? You know when you can tell? Not until after you start to mop with it and you've spread all of this nasty sour smell all over the place. That is a very bad solution, is to leave the mop in the bucket. Okay, so what do you do with it? What if you took that same bucket, you simply put a screw and screwed it to the back of the wall, cut a V slot in the bucket. Now you take your mop and you just take it and slide it into the V. The handle drops down out of the way vertically on the front of the bucket. The wet part of the mop drops into the bucket. Doesn't sit in the bottom of the bucket. It has the ability to dry out so bacteria doesn't grow in it, so you don't get that stinky smell. And any water that happens to drip out of the mop has a chance to dry, and the water just goes to the bottom of the bucket and evaporates. It's the same thing, it's just looking at it different. It just requires that you cut a V in the bucket and that you screw it to the wall. Wow, huh? And I've been using it for years. Here's another example. Have you ever had a garbage can and you're trying to put yard waste in, stickers and sticks and branches and leaves and all kinds of crap, and every time you go to stick it in, it jams into the plastic bag and it tears the bag, so you take the bag out of the garbage can, and that's even worse because now it can poke right through the bag, and when you try to compress it, crunch it down, you use your foot, it tears right through the bag, and it's just a mess. Okay, well, that's because you're using the garbage can wrong. What if you got that same garbage can? By the way, you can go to one of these super centers and get them for $9. You cut the bottom out of the garbage can, and instead of putting the fragile plastic bag inside the garbage can, you put it on the outside of the garbage can. Trust me on this. Look at the shape of it. The bottom is smaller than the top, or in this case on the right, the bottom is on the top and it's small. Okay, now I could take branches and I could take all kinds of sticky stuff. I can jam it into that plastic can, because as hard as it pushes against the side, it's actually pushing against the garbage can, and it never comes in contact with the plastic bag. Okay, so I can step on it, I can crush it, I can jam in any sticks I want. Also, because the bottom of the garbage can, the way the one on the right is situated, is bigger than the one on the top, I can jam it in as tight as I want and it will lift off and not jam. Think about that for a second. The bottom is bigger, so as I lift it off, the bigger part goes over the smaller part of the compressed trash. Now the can simply lifts out. This little cone of compressed, step down, sticky, spiky stuff is suspended basically in midair. You tie up the bag and you walk away from it. Yeah, just cut the bottom out of the garbage can. It actually works a heck of a lot better for yard waste. This works so well, we keep one of them just in the backyard, and anytime we pick up any junk, we just toss it in there and then pull the plastic liner out, throw the plastic bag away. So that's what I want you to think about. Those are 3 simple solutions. So you need to be both the engineer and the architect, the left brain and the right brain, so that you can communicate both sides. The more effective your brain, both sides of your brain can communicate, the more innovative you're going to be. And be aware that change is difficult, but change forces growth. Change forces growth. And it's going to take some work. Soft Voice was another product that I developed, which was just off-the-shelf stuff that nobody had thought to put together in the way I did, and I actually created back in the 80s the first computer to save a human life. That turned into a company that I ran. I had 125 copyrights, 25 sales offices. I'd be happy to share that with you sometime. No time in this video is running plenty long, but it was just another way of looking at existing stuff and putting it together in a way that nobody had thought of. So how do we break through all of this? Well, there's 10 steps here. The first thing is did you know that a 5-year-old or a first grader is 98% more creative than a 40-year-old? That is absolutely true, 98%. And again, it was like my granddaughter coloring outside. Yeah, that is me, by the way. When I was when I was 5 years old in first grade. So it was like my granddaughter who colored outside of the lines. I want you to start coloring outside of the lines. I want you to get that creativity back. Don't let the world beat you down. And what is the one thing you did and here's an exercise. What is the one thing that you did as a kid that you don't do now? Did you color? Go color. Did you play with Silly Putty? Did you use Tinker Toys, Lincoln Logs, Erector sets? I don't care. Play with dolls. Easy Bake Oven. Go get yourself an Easy Bake Oven and make muffins for everybody. On a piece of paper, I want you to draw a picture of yourself as if you were in first grade. Just draw a really simple stick figure. But you know what I want you to do is get out of the 9 dots. I want you to use the hand that is less dominant. If you're right-handed like most of us, I want you to use your left hand to draw that picture. Yeah, that's what expands your brain. Also, the key to change and improvement is acknowledging that problem exists. Well, we've all heard that before too.
Went to the hardware store and bought some used paint. It was in the shape of a house. I also bought some batteries, but they weren't included.
I just love that. Okay, I want you to write your problems down. Follow that first step of the 3 C's. Define them clearly and succinctly. Make problems solvable using question or declarative format. I want you to solve the problems one at a time. Which problem is shared by most of the people in the group or the team? I want you to prioritize those problems. Solicit potential solutions and sources from vendors, customers, colleagues, just about anywhere you can find a solution. Don't rely solely on friends and family or yourself or your trade journals. Trust me, if you're looking for an industry solution, it's not going to be in an industry magazine, because otherwise it would have been solved. You got to step outside. Use deadlines to induce creative thinking. If you don't have a deadline, you're going to take as much time as you want to come up with that solution. Now, here's something I want you to play with: divergent and convergent thinking. Divergent is, what else do we need to know? Convergent is, this is what we know. Now, that doesn't come natural to most people. Most people don't know the difference between divergent and convergent. I can't get into it here, but I want you to go look at it on the internet, be a little familiar, run through a couple exercises. It's going to help. Solve your problem. Avoid going with the first answer. Don't take the easy way out. Brainstorming, teamwork, incredible. Mind mapping. I want you to do brainstorming, and I want you to do mind mapping. If you're not familiar with mind mapping, look it up on the internet. Not enough time for me to teach you that here, but you're going to get different perspectives. And don't problem busting. Don't do that. Don't shoot down ideas because you think that your first instinct is that they're not going to work. Don't disqualify the ideas. Write them all down, because you'll be surprised, as you saw through the rest of this presentation. It's not always obvious. And use discussion to gain ownership. Discuss it. Work it through. Get everybody to kind of buy off on it. And no yeah buts. Okay? No buts. You got to just go with it. And this is about quantity, not quality, because you don't know what the quality is until you have the quantity. Now, here's a couple more examples. Pause the video, read them, understand them. Really, it's just a different way of looking at it. Divergent, what might success look like? What criteria can we use? You're asking what? Convergent, here is the best idea. These are the best criteria. See the difference? You got to look at the problem from both divergent and convergent. Identify measurable results. That's part of the 3 C's as well. Decide how long you'll give a marketing or sales campaign to meet expectations before you cut losses. Set time limits. Establish long and short-term goals. And when will we see the results? Try to determine when you should see an actual result. Map out clearly who does what and when. These are the action items. This is the implementation of your great ideas. Create negative consequences for missed deadlines, because remember, assigning an action item without a negative consequence is a waste of time. People won't do it. And create contingency plan. Prepare for Murphy's Law. I actually got a chance to meet Murphy out at Boeing one time, an older gentleman who came up with Murphy's Law. And assure me, I didn't know him for that long, but I am familiar with his law, and it's absolutely true. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. Did we get the results that we planned for? Do we need to modify our plan? Do we need to lather, rinse, and repeat? You hear me say that in all of my other presentations. Get your ego out of the way. This isn't about ego. It's about finding the right solution. And blinding honesty and objectivity. You got to be honest. You got to be objective. And use failure to correct, adapt, feedback loop. Feedback loop. Lather, rinse, repeat. Lather, rinse, repeat. You hear me say that all the time. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to other uses, eliminate, reverse, rearrange. I want you to look at each of these words, pause the video. I want you to think about the implications of each of these words. Not going to take the time to go through every one of them, but I think you've seen examples in this presentation, and you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. But I want you to think about each one of them for a couple of minutes. So hit pause and then restart it when you're ready to go. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you spending this much time with me and sharing this creative process. I really do. And take a look around at some of the other videos here at Extreme Digital Marketing. My name is Lon Safko. I am the author of the Social Media Bible, and I am here sharing creativity and innovation here on Extreme Digital Marketing.